How you doing, James Margie here at J-Tech, and we're going to perform I'm going to show you some of the steps on performing a minor inspection on this here International. And it has, of course, on everything we do, when you're doing inspections especially, you have some type of checklist. Obviously there's the header information, miles and hours, VIN number, model type, make, year, etc. But one of the first things you do, obviously, you do a walk around the vehicle when you pull it in your shop, see if there's any signs of obvious fluid leaks coming out, draining, dumping. But usually you're not going to see too many of those here. The first thing you really want to do though is you start in the engine compartment, in the cab, and then we'll get to the engine compartment, then we'll do the chassis and the under chassis. One of the things, you can pull up your little, or handheld, or your computer, check for any ECU fault codes. We're going to check the majority of the things right out the front from the cab and the hood, and the chassis and everything is going to be safety related. So first we're going to jump in, see if we get all our lights, our warnings, seat belts, windshield wipers, etc. So I'm going to first start it up. There's the drain, so the machine's going to get the beep in a second. There's the beep for the air, so we'll let that build up a little bit while we're doing some of this. So we're going to accelerate it a little bit just to help it out. It's going through some of its self-checks on its brakes. As you heard some of the spit in the air. So as we do that, let me go check some of the headlights real quick and the marker lights. Turn, see how well that is. We got that one blinking. Blinking, lights on. Headlight's not on, so that one's not working. Obviously, don't do that depth. Check. That one's not on, so that's not blinking. Now this one here, the left turn signal and the tail light are dim. As you can see, stand a little bit more in the dimness. It's there, however, it's not getting the full voltage, so that right there needs to be tested. And it doesn't look like the license plate lamp is working. A lot of times on rigs, your license plate's going to be up front, but it's still required to work. So let me go back and check the brakes real quick, so stay aware with the camera, see if the brake lights come on. Alright, so obviously this one here also had a brake light failure. Thank you for my assistant to let me know that. So that's not functioning. Again, something that we got to look at. It's probably like the light or the ground circuit in between somewhere. We got to fix that. That one's still functioning and working. We'll walk to this side here. That one's working. That one's good. That one's good. Marker light's on. Get the headlamps out. Marker lamps on top. Also inspect the mirrors, the doors, the glass, see if there's any brakes or missing. Everything's good. I'm going to turn it off right quick. I'm going to do the reverse lamp just to make sure it makes it a little easier to do the reverse. Okay, come on up. Engine off. Now that we got it in reverse. I'm being a little stubborn. Alright, no, yep. But it does show that our reverse lamp is working, which is a good thing. Alright. And obviously over the time, the air alarms went off. One thing you don't hear while it is in reverse, there's no backup alarm. So that would be another discrepancy you want to put on to discover why. So next, after doing such as that, we do the checking the horns. This one here is not functioning. And I don't believe it has an air horn on here. At least I don't see one. And let's see. I already did the Myers and the check. So now we're going to do some more of the outside. Turn off the lights, keep some of the power. Obviously this one here doesn't have the brake on, the battery box cover, so that would definitely be not going on the road. And the battery mount is broken, so but I'm just showing you examples. So that would be something you check. If it comes in the shop like that, that's definitely, you're not leaving the shop until that gets replaced. So here, checking the cord, the cable. Looks like all the plugs are there. A little bit of wear, but not too bad. Glad hands. That one's got a little rip to it right there. So it's not a showstopper, but it would be an easy and an inexpensive repair to do. And I'm sure a lot of truckers, actually, when they're on the road, have an extra set of those sitting in the glove box or a toolbox inside a cab somewhere. There's another one. Again, this one's got a little warpage to it, so again, that one there could be replaced also. Alright, piston cable, platform, other hoses, look for any rips and tears. All that is good. Mount. Check the exhaust system over here, see if there's any damage to the mounting system of the exhausts. So here's got some corrosion to it, but none of the mounts are damaged. So walk back over. Careful not to step on the batteries. Alright, and then one of the things we're going to check on here is tire pressure and depth. Don't have a depth gauge with me, but obviously check the depth of each one, record those to make sure they're still within limit. Tire pressure, make sure all of them are within adequate tire pressure. If it's a couple pounds off, go ahead and fill it up. One thing that DOT will notice if it ever pulls over a truck and it finds the tire pressure is 50% or less of whatever is listed on the sidewalls, then it is automatically a flat tire and is not going to be repaired. Or actually has to be repaired, and it's not going to be allowed to move again until it's a replaced and repaired tire on that truck. Just because it's deemed flat. So if you're losing 50% of air while you're going down the road, you've definitely got a definite problem. You got a nail in it, a flat sidewall, a bad bead, something serious has happened. So you don't want to even try and think about that. So next we're going to go check the engine compartment. This one's already unlatched, the other side was also. But we lifted up the way we're supposed to. Alright, that would be something. Make sure that the hood latch is on there. So then it's latching tight. You're going to look for any coolant leaks, oil leaks, power steering fluid leaks, looking for any fluid leaks whatsoever. And on this one here, we're going to check the engine, and part of it is checking fluids. So we'll go and check the engine right quick. Started to wipe it off, but it is still within the marks. I have a large high-low on this one, but it was within the high-low space. So that secures properly. Fluid level here. Obviously you got the hot, cold minimum, or the cold hot, the maximum cold and minimum hot. And obviously you see we're right at that line. That's for your brake fluid, or I'm sorry, your power steering fluid. Brake fluid is the air, so that wouldn't happen. Check for any loose connections on your electrical. Look for any bad air lines up front. Looking at overall condition here. Any breaks in your air intake hoses. Air restriction indicator on this one is located somewhere. If it has one, some might not have an air restriction indicator. I don't particularly see the one on this one. It is darkness, it is night, so again, you'd rather try and really get this inside of a shop. It would be much better to do it in, but our shop's on the full side right now. Go down, look for anything on the lower port, but we will, again, double check more of that when we crawl underneath the truck. Looking for your steering component that says we're here and the tire is turned. Make sure cotter pins are in there for your drag links and your steering arms. Check, see if anything is loose. If we are working on this one. Well, it moves, but it's obviously rotating on a ball up front here. But it is tight. A little bit of excessive grease on this one. So it's good to try and get as much of the excess grease off as you can, as you do have to lube this. And part of the inspection will be to lube this. So you hit all your grease points, and you try to get all that excessive grease off. Kind of like this one here, at the lower portion of the kingpin. Right there, it does have some excessive grease on it. So that right there should be something that you wipe off. Because if that gets up inside in your brake linings, it's going to destroy those linings up on the, because these are disc brakes. But if it gets on your rotor and gets up in your linings, it will destroy those linings. You'll have to do a brake job. So let's go to the other side of the engine real quick. Here's your windshield reservoir, or at least the addition to it, which is actually located further down behind this panel. But again, making sure any hoses, i.e. this one, is a good question where it goes. So this one here should be traced to find out where it should be located. But I'm just going to kind of push it up out of the way for the moment. Again, write it down. That way you do the complete inspection, do a nice list of all your defects, talk to the owner-operator of it, and then go from that. There is your coolant reservoir. Check to make sure your cap's tight. You're within the minimum, which we are. Looking for any loose hoses, loose clamps, broken clamps, anything that's majorly standing out as defective. There is the one right there that did not want to work. Got an air line right here that should have this little chafe guard pushed back on. That only takes a second to throw back up. Look at your fan belt and your cooling fan, your radiator. See if there's any defects or any clogs up in your radiator that as much as you can. Pull up in there, see what the tension is on it. Seems to be pretty tight. Seems that the clutches actually allow some movement of the fan as I'm able to somewhat spin it. Everything looks good in there. So now again, and then while you'd be over on this side, it'd be helpful to have the tire turned the other way. But you can still check your kingpin on this side. And it should also be a good idea to pull it in, and on this portion of it now put it up on a lift. And then on the lift, easier to you to walk underneath except crawl, which is what we'll do here in a second. And then you lift the front end up, so that way you can push and pull on your tire, see if there's any play in your kingpin for your camber. You can grab the tire left and right, shake it, see if there's any play on your tie rods, you see any wear of your ball joints to your tie rods. And then a lot of the other stuff you're going to find on the downside where you're crawling underneath of it. Looking for fuel leaks, looking for anything. Fenders, make sure they're all secured. Part of the chassis. You can walk around. There's no rear mud flaps on these. And most DOTs require it. So right there, you'd probably have to go and get new flaps and new hanger brackets. So the toe panel's all messed up, but these are usually just a bolt-on accessory. That one there got hit, so that one is definitely damaged, so that's not happening. From up here, again, we can look, before we start crawling underneath of it, look for any damage or leaks to your drive axle. Look at, and when I'm underneath there, I'll pull on it and see if there's any play inside of your U-joints. We're looking for any major damage from the top side, because if you're crawling underneath and you're not seeing it from the top, there could still be some issues. So you want to give it a little shot from the top also. Looking at your airbags, make sure there's no rips, any tears, no signs of excessive amounts of wear on it. Check the shocks. Okay, this one here is already disengaged. Need something to kind of click it just to make sure. Checking your brake chambers. We'll go underneath and look a little bit more from the bottom side. Look at your wheel seals on the outside here. See if there's any leaks from your wheel seals, your outer hubs. And on the front, you want to look at your hub level. You don't have to remove it. It's got a little plastic sight glass, big end at night. Just put it up right here, and the line is right there. Around this one here, it actually shows you a little line on the plastic see-through area. It's where it says minimal amount, and it is definitely over that because it's right about there. So that side's good. Granted, it is at a little bit of an angle and turned. It'd be better to check it on a level, flat surface. So now we'll kind of do some crawling underneath the truck. And again, you'd want to do both sides of the hub levels and the outer sides of your rear axles. So now let's crawl underneath the truck and see what we see from underneath there. Okay, so now we're under the truck. Obviously going to check underneath here. So we're going to start back at this, the second rear axle. And on this side here, this one's got disc brakes. If you had drum brakes, the inner portion of it be open, you'd be able to take your tape measure, measure your pad thickness, or the shoe thickness for the brake pad. So that's something you're going to want to do on these. A little harder to do being up in there in the caliper. But I'm looking at this one here. Also, something you look underneath here is if you see a lot of rust on your brake drum, on your drum or your rotor, that means that pad, that brake is not collapsing onto that particular tire, or for that particular wheel, I should say. So that right there means that definitely needs some adjustment because it's not engaging. You also want to look for a lot of excessive grease, and this one here has a whole lot underneath it here. Let me stick my finger up on here on the inner portion, and as you see, there's a whole lot of grease up on that finger. So, finger's nice and oily, a whole lot of grease up, or oil up in here, so that, I believe, this tire needs a new inner hub seal. And it looks like the pads, at least from this angle, look like they're kind of saturated too. So there's a good chance that you'd actually, these brake pads on this caliper would probably need to be replaced. So also under here, you're going to check your brake lines. Make sure the air lines are all there. Any of the air lines up underneath here. Make sure all your U-bolts, U-joints, axle, leaf springs, as applicable, are all in place. I'm doing the other side also. This side's a little cleaner. Not by much, because this one here, probably this side, yep, this whole axle needs to be replaced on inner seals. So I'll scoot up here a little bit more. And if this was a drum brake that had an S-cam, you'd end up measuring the piston side, or the length, the travel length of the brakes, of your brake engagement arms off of your S-cam. So now that we're on the U-joint, shake it around, see if we feel it any, see how much play back and forth there is. It's right in there. That's the backlash within the gearing of itself in your differential. But again, turning it, you want to see, checking the needle bearings of the hubs besides just lifting it up and down. And then you're going to want to do the same on the side. And then that action you're going to do, carry all the way up, all the way through on your drive shaft. This was just a rear shaft. You'd also do it on your main shaft. Also, one part of the inspection, while you have it up on the lift, is much easier. Remove your little plug right here and check the fluid level of your differentials. Make sure they're full. Check your airbag on this one. Check inside there. That wheel seal actually looks pretty good. Can't tell on the brake pads from this angle. This wheel seal is dry also. And there's a nice sheen to the rotor. So that one there looks like it's engaging. Got my grading glasses. Checking all your, we got a little bird nest growing up in here. So that should be removed, because that's Changus that can get into things. And then part of your inspection while you're under your truck under here, or the service, is going to be to hit all the loop points. A lot of these are now sealed bearings, so there are less and less grease certs or grease fittings on the trucks these days. But again, like I stated with the Kingpin, grease it fully until you see new grease coming out throughout there. Just same thing with your U-joint. Make sure you wipe all that excess of grease off, or all that old used grease, so that way nothing gets put into your wheels, and then mess up your brake linings. Same thing up underneath in the transmission for the clutch, so that way it doesn't coat your clutch and then you lose engagement. So now we're gonna crawl up there now and go and check the transmission. Be right back. Okay, almost there, but we'll stop there. Okay, so now here's your air tanks. Again, checking your hoses and your fittings. Make sure there's nothing coming out. Here's your air dryer. Make sure it's not loose. It does have a little bit of movement, but it's not too bad. It's always a good idea. Also, I don't want to drain these right now. I pull from the other side, but to drain these, if it's a truck that's on the road, it should still be drained on a regular basis, just to see if there's any water in it, especially in high humidity states here like Florida. Crawl up here a little bit more. Check this U-joint or the drive shaft. A little bit of play in there, but just try to see where it's at. Inside of your center area right here. Probably use a little bit of excess grease. Build it up. It does not feel excessive. So there's no movement in the U-joint there. So that was in your slip joint right there. Was a little bit of play in that one. So something to keep an eye on. And at this point, if you found it, if it feels excessive, it's when you get your dial indicator out, and then you can measure how much actual play back and forth there would be. So now here underneath the transmission, again, there's a grease for a grease fitting right there for your throw-up bearing. Look for your rear shaft for any leaks, any coolant line leaks here for your engine or your transmission oil cooler. Coming up into here, you can have your assistant or have an assistant up in there, jump in and see what the clutch adjustment would be. See how much free play you have up off the pedal, and then also just check underneath through here for your inspection cover to see how much actual movement you have. Look up under the oil pan, starter, see if you got any leaks or any loose connections, any loose hoses up underneath here. Check in your drive axle or your forward axle, not your drive axle, my apologies. See if you got any damage to it, any cracks. Check your leaf springs on the sides. Checking any, see if they're any loose. Check your shocks. Pretty much running through a good inspection of the whole truck for safety related issues that would cause any issues while you're going down the road. Oil pan and engine underneath here look all pretty good. Tranny's actually fairly clean. Don't see any major leaks, a little bit excess of grease in places. Not too bad. And I'm not going to do the clutch here. I didn't bring the right tool with me out here, but that would be something you would also check. So that pretty much covers all the points of where you're going to hit on a minor inspection. And again, like I said, it'd be easier to doing it up in the air, so you don't have to crawl around under here. And it's a lot more light. So, James from J-Tech. Hope you have a great day.